Yeah. Everybody, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Jazinski, if you can lead us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call?
Councilmember Barbara Bukowski.
Here. Councilmember Michael Jazinski.
Here.
Councilmember Gerald Kaminsky.
Present.
Councilmember Brian Kolarsky.
Present.
Councilmember Vernon Thompson.
Here.
And Supervisor Brian Noah.
Present. All right. We're going to begin this evening's work session with a brief discussion on the situation at the Genesee Street Pump Station. Mark Crystal, if you can approach, and we've got about 5 minutes or so budgeted for this, just to give a brief synopsis of what happened late last week and what we did to rectify the issue.
Sure. I'm just going to hand out these in case you guys didn't see that. It's just a hard copy of Louis' email from the other day, along with a few other things I added in there. So as we discussed up here in the past, there's 3 stations that are in the airport area. There's Holt Station, there's Ryan Road Station, and there's Genesee Street Station. And these stations go back to the mid to late 70s. Okay, so they're approximately pushing 50 years old. So through ARPA, you'll see some photos in the back here. We were able to rebuild the Holtz and the Ryan Road Station. Okay, you'll see photos of that as you get near the back of the packet. A street view of what it looked like before and what it does currently look like now. And obviously, we knew there was a need for Genesee Street as well. But obviously, that was a negotiated deal with the development that's happening out there. So that's why we didn't address that through last year's funding. So on Friday, we had a major pump failure at that station. So we have telemetry and other communications where our stations talk back to our sewer maintenance office, for lack of a better word. So we have floats in there that give us alarms, low levels, high levels, and whatnot. So early afternoon, we got a high level alarm, and the guys went out there, and one of the pumps actually seized. It froze. Okay, so basically the phasing in the pump, the electrical component of the pump froze. So there's 2 pumps in these stations, and they rotate. One runs and the other one runs, so they kind of time out, so they're both getting worked about the same amount of time. So when that pump froze and freezed out, the second pump kicked in. That pump then got clogged, over 90% clogged in a pump. So then the station got the high level alarms because the flow in the stations was backing up on that. So we had to bring in Xylem, our fleet pump maintenance gentlemen, because they're technicians, because not only do you have to disassemble the electrical component, you have to reprogram it so that these pumps can then talk back to our telemetry so we know what's going on. So we had to pull the first pump, pull the second pump once we found it was clogged. Now they're back at the station to see if they can be rebuilt, but we had no spares for these stations. Okay, so luckily out of the 4 pumps that we pulled last year at Holtz and Rhine, there was one that was relatively new, 5 years old. So we actually made the investment to rebuild that one just in case. So we had that pump on hand. So that's now on the ground, as long as another spare from a different station that we had to basically hot wire to make it work. So that station is now up and running again, but let's knock on wood that nothing happens with the 2 pumps that are there, because if they do, we really have nothing on our shelf that we can try to get in there to keep these pumps moving. Okay, so the last thing I put in this attachment that's new to Louis' email is basically from Flight, they're the concertor pumps. It's a new technology that we're doing in our station. So these pumps now, all the mechanics, all the computerization is actually in the pump itself. Okay, so it's now down in the station. So these pumps are smart pumps. So when they get clogged up, they're smart enough to stop pumping. They'll pump in reverse to declog themselves and so on and so forth. So actually, it's very great technology. Actually started in Europe. These pumps are built in Sweden. Okay, they came to the States probably 15, 20 years ago. So now, we're getting caught up with current times on that. These pumps are now running in Holtz and Rhine. Phenomenal. Okay, we used to get almost a weekly clog at Holtz, basically because of stuff that was being put in the system from the hotels and whatnot. We haven't had one since these pumps have been put in. So it's great technology. These are the pumps we're using now. The lead time on these is quite large because they come from Sweden. Okay, but this is a good technology. This is what we're moving forward with on that. So again, station's back up and running. Let's hope we have no issues with the two pumps that are there. Because if we do, you know, the two old pumps are currently now in Batavia being pulled apart to see what it's going to take to get them back operational and what cost that'll be associated with that. Okay, we don't have those numbers yet because literally they're still being taken apart as we speak. So once we get those numbers back, we'll report back to the board to see, is it worth making the investment while we're transitioning to a new station or what we need to do. But right now, everything we have is in the ground. Okay? I'll take
I
any
just wanted
questions.
to confirm that. We don't have any backups for the airport area right now, right?
We have one backup for Holtz and Ryan.
Okay.
Okay?
As long as we get those other two back, or,
Yeah, well, those are consider pumps now. So those new pumps are in Holtz and Ryan. Okay, so we ordered 5, okay?
Right.
Knowing that 4 go in the ground and we'll have a spare. When we do Genesee Street, we're gonna order 3. 2 going around, then we have 2 spares to service the 3 stations, okay? And that'll be sufficient for us, okay? So right now we have 1 spare. The consider we can't modify to put into Genesee Street Station, okay? So the consider we have on a shelf is strictly for Holtz or Ryan right now, okay? But the new station will ultimately have these consider pumps in it. So all 3 stations at the airport will be consider pumps moving forward once we get Genesee reconstructed.
gotcha. Any other questions from board members? Councilmember Jazinski.
So Xylem's hydraulic division's right here off of William Street.
Correct, yes, but their maintenance division's in Batavia.
So I'm just looking here. It looks like there was an email sent back in 21 of August, knowing that there was a problem with this pump station. And the email was sent to the board prior to myself, Councilmember Bukowski, and Thomas being on the board, saying the cost would roughly be about $362,103. My question is with all the talk of prices going up for everything, why didn't we address it then?
That's a great question, Brad, because we didn't at the time have the funds to do that. When ARPA came to fruition, then we decided we will attack Holtz and Ryan because then the development started to come to the town about the same time on Transit Road. So again, there's been a negotiation ongoing with that as far as offsetting some of the costs from the developer and that station. So all the flows from the area go to Genesee Street. We couldn't leverage funding for Holtz and Ryan because no development flows are heading that way. Okay, so that's why we kind of stepped up on that to hopefully save us some money that way. And it sounds like we're at that point now, Michael. Okay, yep.
Councilmember Pilarski, I'm sorry.
What is the lead time and cost on one of those Xylem pumps?
16 to 20 weeks.
And what's the cost?
All 3 pumps with the control panel, with all the housing we need to do that, all 3 pumps is about $102,000.
Any other council members? All right,
Okay.
appreciate the update.
You
Thank
got it, thank you.
All right, next up, we have folks representing 3325 Genesee Street. Dan Young, the podium is yours.
Good evening, board member. Good evening, board members. Yes, so we have a project that's coming before you, 3325 Genesee. The applicant is seeking to establish provisional medical housing. This housing is for the reintegration of both veterans and mental health recovery patients. It's approximately about 40 beds between the 2 programs. It wouldn't exceed 120 days per stay, from my understanding. And we wanted to just have them give them a brief overview of the project at this time for you all. So if there's any questions, we can start the identifying those answers early on in the process at this time. Then if Kim, if you could just pull up those slides that I sent you earlier. Once those slides are up, I'll turn it over to the project representation here this evening.
Good evening. My name is Dan Brock from LaBella Associates. I'm here tonight with Shelby Wagner from LaBella, also with the civil engineers designers for the project. Along with us tonight are representatives for Chris Syracuse from DePaul Properties and Aaron Corcoran from Eagle Star Housing. They are both partnering together as this project in a way. I did bring handouts of what's on the screen if anybody would like one to look at closer. But basically what we're looking at is, what we're proposing to do is a two-phase project. Each building, Eagle Star would manage the first phase and DePaul would own and manage the second phase. The site, I can't really wine and dine you with the nuances for the site, but basically each site will be independent. Each building will have its own utilities, its independent management system. The only thing that they'll share is the entrance going in. As Dan said, there are two phases. Phase one will be approximately 20 units. Phase two will be 14 units. The building on the right of the screen would be phase one. Building on the left would be phase two. It would have, the only thing that may require variance is parking that we're still looking into. As we find a lot of times when we do these projects, parking, we don't need as much as code normally requires. But we're still evaluating that. There's plenty of room on the site for us to do parking. If needed, we try to have as much green space, parking, snow storage, we try to make it countable. But that's the only thing we may be requesting from the town as far as the variance. But the site is very simple with the entrance coming in off of the church parking lot. We actually own that parcel that is the entrance, and the church has an easement, or that building has an easement to get in there. So that would be a shared ingress egress for both phases. But again, each one would be looking for its own independent approval system. In other words, comments for one phase would be for DePaul and the other would be for Eagle Star. And that's based on funding and different property ownerships. As I said, the site is very straightforward. It's it's a clean site, level site now. We're working on drainage. It'll have storm water. It'll have screening for the neighboring property. And our intention is not to touch any of the existing buffer that is between the proposed project and the residential communities around it. Really, we're just going to use the open green space. So as far as the site goes, that's about what I have for you. I wanted to save time in case you had questions as far as the Eagle Star or DePaul, and both representatives are here to speak to any of that if the board has any questions.
All right, I'll open it up to board member questions. We'll start with council member Pilarski.
So is that a shared right of way off of the church? Or, because I'm wondering like, why not directly off of the street for the entry point?
May I approach?
Yeah,
Step through?
sure.
Please do.
Just so this little parcel here, that's actually part of this parcel. So this parcel actually owns that entrance. So the existing entrance is has an egress agreement for this property. Using that, if we were to try to make a new entrance off of that state as close to the bridge, there's not proper site distance. I don't believe it would be accepted.
Dan, we can interrupt real quick here. Just to give identification of where this would be located, it's right at the intersection of Genesee and Beach.
Correct, across from Crab Apple.
Right, so you had
next
that
to
grade
the church.
change there in Genesee there.
Yep.
And that was, I think, one of the considerations we talked
Yeah.
about during the concept meeting is getting a DOT right-of-way permit is not the easiest of tasks. And then B, you have this grade change that adds up with cost for the group at this time.
Yeah, thank you. It's an existing feature that's already there. It's established. There's already traffic counts and allowability for site distances based in off of the DOT. So that way, and the two agencies, they will, they're working together throughout. So that easement will be set in place before anything moves forward as far as closings.
No, I mean, I get the safety piece of it all. I definitely support this project. I've been following it since I heard the rumors of it all
Right.
and everything. My only concern is that shared easement piece, because we currently have a situation in Cheektowaga, and I'm not gonna name anyone, but Rick knows there's a battle over the easement, the right of way of it all, and who could use it. And I don't want to see that happen
Sure.
of, hey, it's our property or it's the church's, when in reality it's a shared one, and now it's a battle. So just trying to avoid that
Understood.
piece of it, but totally understand the safety piece as you're coming down that bridge.
Yeah, it would be hard for the DOT to allow us entrances, there's certain requirements for distance between those entrances. It would be very hard pressed to get that there. In addition to the grade change and the cost, it's more of 100% just, it's an established entrance and for safety concerns.
Is it safe to assume you've already spoke with the church and are working with that church, or they don't know about this yet and they're gonna find out now?
I don't know what kind of outreach has been done. I believe there's been minimal outreach. Really, what we want to do is attend a work session to feel how the board is responsive to it. And if they are in favor, if they'd like us to put in changes, what we try not to do is introduce ideas without knowing we can move ahead with those ideas. So we thought we'd introduce this to you very early. And then we would move after this point towards working with the town, with the neighborhood, the community, what we need to integrate into that. And that would be what our official application would be. To try and limit the changes, sorry.
I think it's a good move for you to come here early in the process. I've been to a couple community meetings, taxpayer meetings recently, and questions that have come up. More, not just for you, but for our internal staff, is how do we find out about these projects? And, the proposed answer I had at the time was, we do exactly what's happening right now, bringing it at the ground floor before you go before planning and zoning and traffic safety and all these things. So
Yeah.
I think this is a good process for that, and thank you for doing that, and it's something we should continue in the future with that. But for myself personally, there's a signalized intersection right over here, so the questions I had relative to shared entrance are, I have no issue with it knowing that there's a stoplight there. There's really no alternative to it. Any other board member comments, questions, concerns?
It's not an age restriction.
I will pass as far as, if you'd like to come up, Chris,
Well, sure. The question was, I'm sorry.
age restrictions.
Age
As far as
restriction.
the
So-
tenants.
For the veterans.
Oh, for the veterans. Very.
So Eagle Star Housing, my name is Erin. I am the Director of Veteran Operations. The purpose of this shelter is really very exciting for us because it's all going to be on one level, and our veterans that are aging in place are having a very difficult time in our current programs, navigating stairs and all of those things. So this is very exciting for us. We do not have an age range. They have had to serve in the military. We have folks that are as young as 22, and I have somebody who's 87 currently in shelter.
Now, two buildings, one with 20, one with 14, are both facilities all veterans, or is just one veterans and the other one's gonna be a different demographic? Because it seemed like you volleyed it over to Eagle Star when we were asking veterans, so to me, I'm kind of getting two different populations.
Two different populations, and Eagle Star is going to manage and navigate the 20-bed facility.
And what are the other 14?
The other 14 are folks with mental health issues. And that'll be 14 beds. And those will be folks from Erie County. We're not shipping them in from other parts of the state. There are people that, it'll be about a 120-day length of stay. And our job at DePaul will be to get them more permanent housing, get them the supports they need, counseling, therapy, all that good kind of stuff. The program we have on Old Union Road, that's for folks length of stay of 1 to 3 years. So some of these folks will be a feeder to that program on Old Union.
Is there a timeline for the veterans? Or they stay however long, or is it also 120 days?
Normally, it is 60 to 90 days. However, with the difficulty in finding permanent housing, that has increased a little bit to about 120, 180 days.
Any other board?
So for both, it's a temporary housing, so you can find something more permanent for both veterans and mental health.
Temporary housing with the plan to find more suitable, affordable, permanent solutions upon discharge.
And the same with the mental health, yes.
So in the event that they're saying overflow, where do they go?
Overflow for the veterans?
Occupancy, yes.
Probably won't, right? You won't see that because we can only go to capacity. right?
We can only go to capacity. However, Eagle Star Housing has specific veteran shelters in other counties. We have one in Ontario County and one in Monroe County.
So if need be, they'd go to another facility.
We could potentially do that, yes. Most of our referrals are from the Department of Veterans Affairs. We're contracted through them. And so we will likely be full with my conversations with the VA almost immediately. And so if there are overflow, we work very well with our different VAs to kind of move people around if necessary.
This will be the first in Erie County?
This will be the first contract residential program for veterans in Erie County. Yes, there is another veteran program that is not funded in the same way, and it's up to a 2-year program, but that's not our program.
Much needed.
Oh, Councilmember Johnson.
Hi, can you just explain the relation between the two properties and how they intertwine a little bit better for me, please?
Sure. DePaul and Eagle Star actually talked about merging together as two not-for-profits. It turned out that's probably not going to be the case. But a lot of veterans, as you guys may know, also have mental illness. And DePaul works almost exclusively with folks with mental illness or that are on limited income. So we thought this would be a good partnership. We're doing the same thing. A lot of the veterans, although we're two separate, distinct programs, a lot of the folks do have mental illness that are veterans. And again, I think our job is to just give them that tune-up they need. If they need medication, if they need therapy, doctors' appointments, that we will get them all in place, transportation. And then our goal for both programs, I think, right, Aaron, is to get them, just give them that jump start so they don't have to cycle in and out of homelessness, and just get them on the road to recovery. And, you know, I did want to mention, DePaul always, I know, you know, we are tax exempt, but we always do, are willing to do an in lieu of tax agreement with the town of Cheektowaga. We're doing it now with our Project Dental Union, and it's our expectation to continue to do that, because there are times we do utilize the police, and we want to, it's our way to give back to the municipality. And a lot of the jobs we create are going to be folks in this area. You know, we're not going to hire people and bring them in from Rochester. I'm born and raised in Cheektowaga, and we always are committed to hiring folks from the community.
Councilmember Kaminsky, then Pilarski.
How many employees do you intend on hiring?
So believe it or not, I'll let Aaron answer for the veterans, but for the mental health, we're going to have 20 full-time employees on for 14 people, because it's going to be really intense. So that's 20 FTEs of staffing. It's 800 hours a week. Do you want to answer for the veterans?
It really depends on, a lot of our staff are part-time, so it really depends. Usually we're about 13 to 15 employees for our full-time sites. We are staffed 24/7, 365 days of the year. Staff have to be trained in specific things like military culture, veteran benefits, those types of things. And so we try and hire full-time staff only, but obviously that doesn't always work. So about, I would guess about 13.
So we're probably talking about 33 to 35 employees for both programs.
Yeah. And the house manager at this particular site, she's already actually running the Pembroke location, which is our hope to shut that program down and move that program here. After conversations with the VA and the disrepair of our current shelter, and the fact that it is all of the beds except for 2 are on the second floor, and that has becoming increasingly problematic for our elderly veterans. So some of those staff will come from that location to work here, but some of that staff actually lives in this area.
Councilmember Pilarski.
Yes. So in the event the veterans housing is filled to capacity, do they have the opportunity to go into DePaul's Because the veterans has, the rights to your housing for the Gold, Eagle Star.
You know, the honest answer to that is probably if they have a mental illness, they
Correct.
might qualify. But if they
If they don't have
don't,
the mental illness. then
right,
they
they
don't.
can't.
But if they do have the mental illness, yeah,
Yes,
that's
they,
what I was
they
kind of wondering.
could, that's I never thought of that, that if there's a veteran with a mental illness and we have an opening, sure. Yep. Great, great question.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Dan, is there anything you wanted to do in closing or share or?
No.
All right, I appreciate you guys coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Alrighty. Next up on the work session, we have the Zoom policy. I wanted to take a few minutes for the board to discuss this. I'm going to pass a couple handouts down here. I've got 3 going this way, so I'll take a moment for all those to get down to the other end. I know over the last several meetings, we've utilized Zoom as council members in part to access the board meetings. And there's been some question about whether or not the access meets the specifics of the town's policy and the public officers law and all that. And the purpose of this, from my vantage point, is just to make sure that our policy and what we do matches what's actually happening. I know it was brought up in email chains, some differences of opinion about this, so I wanted to draw attention to sections 2 and 3 of this about the extraordinary circumstances. And I'll read it aloud and then we can get into a bit of discussion about what it means and if we want to change it. It says, if due to extraordinary circumstances, a member of the Cheektowaga Board who wishes to attend and participate in the meeting is unable to be physically present at the meeting location that is open to the public and identified in the public notice for such meeting, such member may submit a written request to the Cheektowaga Town Board to attend the meeting via video conference from a location that is not open to the public. The written request must be submitted within a reasonable time in advance of the meeting and in no event later than the time requested to allow the public notice for the meeting to be revised to indicate that the meeting will be conducted by the use of video conferencing. And it must identify the general nature and the extraordinary circumstance that causes such member to be unable to be physically present at a meeting location that is open to the public and identified in the public notice. And then there's section 3 that says extraordinary circumstances shall include. And the way it reads right now is disability, illness, caregiving responsibilities, and D, any other significant or unexpected factor which precludes such members' physical attendance at such meeting or location open to the public. And again, I'm raising this just to make sure we have a policy in writing that matches what we're allowing. And up to this point, I think it's been, in terms of the spirit of how we do things, fair to allow use of this medium. You know, we've had situations with previous boards of people that have not been, that have been sick or have had certain issues come up where they can't make it. But we just need to make sure that all of us agree on what this means. And if we want to change it, we should run our proposed changes or desired changes through the law department, make sure that they go along with state law and what we want to do, we're allowed to do. That makes sense. So I think that if we're going to have if we have a one-off situations that one of us need to be on Zoom for a certain reason, you know, we've gotten written request, I need to be on Zoom for XYZ, and those come in, okay, well and good. There's situations where that's drawn out for an extended period of time. Depending on the purpose, I would think we need to either add a section or change the language within the Zoom policy. So I got a little bit more to add before I go any further. Does anybody want to jump in and add questions, thoughts, concerns relating to this? So, Councilman Flaherty.
I mean, I expressed in my email that I don't think extraordinary circumstances include vacations, out of town for job training, especially when it's in the tune of 3 to 4 months. I mean, I myself have come in twice already while on vacation to attend board meetings. And if we want to change that, I think it should be spelled out in here, but I don't think vacations or out of town for work is extraordinary. It's planned ahead, you know it's coming and all that. In addition to, it doesn't stop any one of us from abusing this policy and becoming a snowbird. I mean, if we're just gonna allow everybody to jump on board, you know, and zoom in, you get elected in the town of Cheektowaga as an elected official, go to Florida from November till April, and I'll zoom in, you know? I mean, it could be abused that way. So I think the way it's written speaks for itself. I just think it needs to be enforced.
Gotcha.
I'd like to add something.
Yeah, Councilmember Bukowski.
Vacation is one thing because you can plan a vacation and plan around the town board meeting.
Mhm.
However, majority of you, actually all of you have full-time jobs. And sometimes the employer needs to send you for specific and special training. And that's out of your hands on when those trainings are. So I think there should be an exception to that.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to the question of employment, and I really don't bring it up to pick on anybody. It's just what's in writing has got to be the same as what we're allowing. And if the state law on the use of Zoom allows us to add to our policy an employment condition, I can see circumstances where any of us, for employment-related reasons, may need to take advantage of Zoom. I mean, even in my case, you know, this is my full-time job, but there may be a case where I'm out of town for some type of training that, you know, participating there and being at whatever out-of-town training that would be critical for XYZ reason might be the most sensible way to do things. So, you know, I would imagine that if we want to add some employment condition to this, that we would have to change sections 2 and 3. And quite honestly, I do not know if we're allowed to, but I just wanted us to have that, just get that discussion moving along here today to see if there's interest in doing that. And if there is, I think where we will have to start is running our desired language through the law department, making sure that it goes along with public officers law and existing state video policies to have in writing what we've allowed in practice up to this point. That makes sense. That's all I've got. Councilmember Thompson.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Barb had mentioned, because, you know, I've said to numerous people, one thing I don't like about this position is I wish it could be full-time, because you have to have another job, unfortunately, to survive. So I do understand having another job, and fortunately, I'm able to leave early, otherwise I'd be late for every meeting as well. So not everybody's as flexible, but I agree, there should be something standard to allow that, but have provisions to say, you know, guidelines to it.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, you have to have another job. Most people do. Most jobs are 9 to 5. Some require training outside. It's nothing I've been familiar with because I've been, you know, pretty consistent in my position, but I agree, there should be something as long as everybody's aware of it. Or I don't have a problem with it. I do understand what Mr. Pilarski was saying, because you know, obviously I wouldn't want to be in Florida for 6 months out of the year if you could. But I get it. So.
Yeah, I think we can do something here that is a little forgiving without creating that situation, because we have it. I mean, we got to think about the boards of the future, and they look at precedent here, they look at a lack of enforcement, and you could drive a truck for this eventually. So that, I don't want us to get into a spot with this policy where we put something in writing and then just goes completely by the wayside, and then somebody 20 years from now says, oh, look, they actually had a policy, but you have half the board meet, you have 3 people meeting on Zoom for the sake of argument, or 2 if we reduce our board size, you know, and they're just consistently doing that, and it's not in writing, that it could be abused down the road. So, Any other comments from board members before I make a suggestion? Councilman Jazinski?
I think it's actually admirable for people, individuals on this board, if they're, providing for their family and their primary source of income is going out of town periodically. So as Mr. Thompson said, you have to have another job. I couldn't survive off the salary that this does. I do it because I love this town. I'd actually do it for free. I'd be in favor of writing a resolution to eliminate the salaries altogether. So, and put it back into the taxes, give it back to the taxpayers. I would do this job for free because I'm passionate about it. And I love this town. And if I'm away from this town, I think I'm doing my duty and what I signed up for and attending the board meetings. I mean, because realistically, I could probably call in and not attend the meeting altogether. So when I'm out of town training, I have homework to do, and I set that aside to do my civil duty, what I signed up for, and that served this town. So it's no different if you served overseas and, you worked overseas, you're still a taxpayer in this town. I pay taxes in this town. I've earned the right to be here. I think if somebody has their primary source of income be threatened by this, it's going to be tough for people, and I don't think that's fair. I think that it should be a consideration, even if they're on vacation, so what? They pay taxes in this town. They've earned the right to be on this board. Let the people decide. When it comes election time, let them decide if it's right for them.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members? I propose that, that we draft some language to amend, this sections 2 and 3 to address, employment-related issues. I don't know exactly how that would read right now, but I just want to put that on the table to say that I'm willing to make an adjustment for this to address for training situation that you may have, right? It's just, if we get it in writing and it's consistent with what's being done, I'm okay with that. When it comes to vacations, we have people out here that work for this town that when they have their vacations, they're answering their phones and addressing work-related questions. I don't think we should have a policy that says if a council member wants to go on vacation, they can Zoom in. I think that's a bridge too far for me, but for employment, I'm okay with it.
What happens if somebody spent $10,000 on their vacation and they put their vacation on hold and then they say, hey, I'm going to set it aside and I'm going to do my civil duty and Zoom in? I think that's admirable. During their vacation, I don't think there should be that stipulation in there. Everybody that works very hard, they deserve a vacation. And, if they spend a lot of money on their vacation, that shouldn't be a stipulation for them to not be a part of the board meeting, right?
We have our meeting scheduled for the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of every month, with the exception right now of June and maybe December, because we got an election day there and it's 2nd or the 4th Wednesday. We know when the meeting dates are. I think we should plan our lives around those. And if one of us are going to miss a meeting for a much needed vacation, I'd say you just miss the meeting. If you're out of town for providing for your family, that's a different situation altogether. And I would be okay with allowing a Zooming in on a couple or a few instances for something like that. But we know when the meeting dates are, it's just like the schedules that we give to the folks that work in all the other departments in town. They know when their schedule is and when they're expected to be in, I think we got to do the best to hold ourselves to the same standard.
Well, and I gotta agree with you, and this is just my take on it. When I ran for office, I knew what it entailed. I knew what the paycheck was. I pretty much had a pretty good idea of what I had to do and what the requirements were. And I don't think in a case like this that you should be absent from a job that you're basically paid to do. It may not be a lot, and I understand it's not enough to support anybody. But we're here to support the taxpayers, the workers, the people of the town of Chickawaga. That's why they elected us, is to be here, not to be someplace else and where I've got a problem, even when we were doing the Zoom meetings. How in the world do you do an executive session and not mistrusting anybody that you don't know who could be listening in the next room or out in the hallway when we're in executive session? How you prevent that, I have no idea. I have no idea. And it's like I said, even in my case, relative to what Brian said, I always scheduled my vacations, sometimes a couple of times a year. First thing I look at is not only the town meeting schedule, but business meeting schedules that I have to make. And so I have to work around them. It's not the end of the world in my book, and everything can't be by my convenience. And it's like I said, to me, we got a whole lot of responsibility up here. And it's like I said, it's very difficult. Honestly, myself, I do Zoom meetings almost every single day of the week. It's a nightmare. Absolutely nightmare. Takes us 3 times as long to get anything done. Sometimes it's so hard to understand. You get involved with some of the other sites like WebEx. You can't hear what anybody says. And try and get 26 people on a Zoom meeting and talk. It doesn't work. And to me, there's nothing better than being in person. And I understand there's extenuating circumstances, but like I said, I try and work around it no matter what.
I'm glad Jerry raised that question about Zoom meetings. So I work for an international company. So anybody that's familiar with Teams, I do Teams meetings every single day with people around the world about our product because we can't physically all gather in one room. So I'll be talking from people all over the world about products and just production and stuff, talking about the viability of the company. So we use Teams, it's pretty much an expanded version of Zoom. So I do it every day. I do 3 to 4 Teams meetings a day. Without that, I think it's a great tool to utilize. And I think that we have the ability to use it. Why count somebody out if they're willing to come to the meeting and have a vote? And to your thing saying people listen in on executive sessions, would it be fair to say that things have leaked out of executive session, Jerry?
Because that's the point I was making.
And it's a yes or no answer.
Well, it's a yes answer, no doubt about that. But it's like I said, the best you can do is hope to keep it to a minimum.
Agreed.
So if I'm correct, we kind of followed New York State on this because there's guidelines given out by them when they actually allowed this for open meetings, if I'm correct. Can we check with, so is it really dictated for us? Do we have an option to give it wiggle room or add to it?
That's question number 1 for the attorney, if he has an answer.
Yeah,
this evening.
you alluded to it, Supervisor. I mean, the issue is you guys are kind of missing the boat on this open meetings law was amended some time ago regarding the use of video conferencing, and it's evolved and amended since COVID. However, it's not for this body to determine whether you can or when you can use open meetings law or for video conferencing to fit a particular situation. And in my opinion, for reading the law, traveling for work is neither significant nor unexpected. That's not my language. That's language from the open meetings law. So if there is a challenge at some point, or Article 78, there's an aggrieved party, that could be an issue. So that's something you have to stay within the parameters of open meetings law.
So in reality, we could get jammed up if a resolution passes 4-3 and that other member is not physically present here, correct? If they file an Article 78?
Correct. I mean, there are certain situations where you have a vote and it's a closed vote, or somebody's here and they vote on Zoom or Teams or whatever, but if somebody is an aggrieved party, it could be a plethora of situations, that somebody could be that party. It's going to fall back on the law. And, was the absence or was the person who was not here and voted, within the confines of the parameters of the open meetings law. And it's spelled out pretty clearly. I forward that around. And it's pretty much extenuating circumstance. It isn't a predetermined vacation. It isn't, another job. Unfortunately, you guys are elected, you take a position knowing that you have to be here at a certain time and you have to fight on that responsibility.
Well, with that, are there any other comments from board members before we move on to the next topic? Councilmember Thompson, we'll finish up with you.
So I guess my question is, what is it we're looking to accomplish here? Is this just are we gonna do anything with this, or?
It's based on the attorney's opinion at this point in public officers law, we may not be able to do anything with it. It's just a matter of bringing this up, having a brief discussion about it and seeing if it's possible. So, I mean, we can, I don't even know if it's worth looking into it any further. It sounds like the state law and the public officers law governs what we can do here. If there's an ability for an exemption, maybe we can take some action, but it doesn't sound like it is.
So I guess the first thing is if John can get something from the state to confirm one way or another, and then we'll work from that.
It's the open meetings law. I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's, I'll circulate it to the board, I mean, but it's black and white. I mean, you know, I guess you guys can debate, discuss what extenuating circumstance it is, but I mean, I don't think, you know, vacation, outside work, you know, kids recital, family member, I mean, it's sickness, it's something that's unexpected.
Yeah, and at the beginning, I did mention, we have to figure out, can we do something? And if we can, what do we want to do? And it sounds like we can't do anything, that the policy we have, we can be more restrictive if we want, but we can't be more lax. So,
I mean, one thing you might want to consider, which I don't believe you have in place, is a process for requesting a Zoom link or the reason behind it. I mean, it should go to the town clerk who runs the meetings. You know, it should be a formal request, you know, so it's in writing. And in the event that something does occur down the road, you know, you can revert back to that message and the reasoning behind it.
that's probably something we can add to the policy then. That would be something we can do. All right, and with that, we're gonna move on to some old business items. First, we have the historic preservation ordinance. We have Maureen Gleason with us tonight, and before she begins, I just want to say our big goal here is to finalize the draft language for historical preservation ordinance and hopefully get a public hearing as early as the first meeting of June. It's a hardy document. We did have some discussion over redlining and potential changes. At one point, there was discussion about the town historian, myself, and Councilmember Jazinski sitting down to do some redlining and details of working that out. So I will give the floor over to the town historian to talk a little bit about where we are in the process. And thanks for adjusting the microphone there. Floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. So you received some paperwork from me. Thank you for bringing your red pen tonight and your paperwork. I really anticipated much more feedback from our council members than I've already received. As far as taking the law and drafting it and changing it, amending it and tweaking it to your specifications. I did send you a 2-page sheet that I took from all their board minutes and all the recommendations and amendments, but we need to agree or disagree on each of these items. Okay, to put it into law or not. So we all need to agree, or maybe the historic preservation chair and co-chair and myself get together and speak on behalf of the other board members, but we got to get these 2 pages finalized of all the recommendations that have come through since December 13th.
Gotcha. So with that, I mentioned it at the beginning, my proposal would be that we have a meeting of the chair and the co-chair of the historical committee, which would be the 2 of us. Maureen and I were talking about possibly a Friday afternoon or evening. Is that a day that will work for you, or?
Yeah, after 5 p.m.
After 5? You could do in the evening? I make it
Sure.
work in the evening. So would this Friday work for you? I mean, I'll get it in.
I have plans this Friday.
Okay. So I'll get an email with the 3 of us together, and I'll propose next Friday and ask for a couple other dates. And hopefully we can sit down between this evening and the next town board work session and at least get those proposals all together into the document. We don't have to go through it again at the work session. I think it's best to circulate that through an email and just do follow-up with individuals. I'll work with Jerry and Brian. Mike, if you could work with Barbara and Vern to make sure they take a look at that and see if they have any concerns with it. We'll bring it back to the full board And then we'll have something that can get one last review by law department before we officially call for the public hearing.
Right,
So-
because we actually have a sheet coming just from our attorney too on some concerns that we need to address as well. I tried to make everything as easy as possible for some of you because you haven't been on the board that long. I also enclosed my original October 2017 when I came to the board initially with this proposal. So it's been a couple of years. And I hope that helped clarify some things for you and explain things a little bit better, why we're here, why we'd like to go forward with this. And again, you have my number, you can call me at any time, so thank you.
Okay. Appreciate your time.
You're
So,
welcome.
to finish that up, I know that the beginning of June might be an ambitious goal with all the things we have to do. I'd like to hold to that for the moment. If it takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit longer, but it at least gives us something to aim for and get this off of our old business list. So next up, we have the draft EMS study. This one's going to be very quick. The latest update I got from CGR through our emergency manager was that the final report for the EMS study is still not ready.
Really?
Really. And the town received a bill to pay the remainder of the invoice. We won't be paying that at the moment until we get the product.
Right.
I'm gonna put a personal phone call in. There've been emails, once again, to get the final product there, but unfortunately, this evening, we're gonna have to move right on to the next item. So
Do we
that's all
have
I've
an
got.
interim plan in place in the event?
Say it again,
Do we have an interim plan?
for how to get the EMS study?
Well, to my knowledge, we don't have a contract with the MS, right?
Right now, the EMS board, they had a meeting yesterday evening. We're talking about, without getting into too many details. We're talking about a few of the things that the members of the EMS board would like incorporated into the new ambulance contract. So that has been the past couple months of action on that board. Once we get the final list of asks and the specific language, then we're gonna take that into the negotiations with AMR. We can always put this out for an RFP, but historically, we have gotten one bidder, and that's AMR. But we're getting closer to a contract, and we need to have the work of the EMS board continue next month in order to get there. All right?
So there is no interim plan then, right?
Right now, AMR is still providing services without a contract. The advantage, there are a few advantages to a contract, but they've been serving town residents from the moment the contract expired. Yeah.
You mentioned sometimes there's only one bidder for that.
Yeah.
Would it hurt to put it out to bid just to see? Good.
We've done that previously and we got AMR, we have Twin City, they deal with the north towns and some other areas. Mercy Flight,
I was gonna say Mercy
yeah.
Flight's got their ambulance service too now.
and Barb, I'm sure you know some of the history here. Years and years ago, you had multiple competitors, and the same thing has happened to the ambulance industry that happened to Blockbuster. They bought up all the video shops. AMR bought up all the small ambulance companies, or they sold to the big guys. So there's basically a monopoly in the region. Yeah, you have two big guys, but Mercy Flight, if they bid, they're gonna have to scale up to buy extra apparatus. They're gonna have to go get buses and that. Even LVAC, I don't know if they would bid on that. That's more municipal service and, we could put it out and I would be shocked if there were a second bidder, but that's an option.
But piggybacking off of Vern, I mean, we
Yeah.
have absolutely nothing to lose to put it out to bid.
Right.
Even if AMR is the owner, and maybe we're surprised
Right.
and one of those other ones do bid it on it and that. I mean, we're seeing it happen right now in Maryville School District where First Student monopolizes the busing company in this area. Well, Western New York Busing outbid First Student and now they're taking over this contract starting next year. There's a cost savings to the district. We have absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain if we put it out to bid. So I would second that with Vern and say, let's take a swing at it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that if we put it out to bid, we're still gonna need the input from the EMS board.
Correct.
It's
It's
part
still
of the
no
bid
different than just AMR
specs.
signing a contract at the end of the
Yeah.
day, whether they're the only bidder, the low bidder,
All right.
or they don't get it.
So this is something I'll take back to the EMS board next month. I think legally speaking, we do have the power because of professional services to go about it that route.
Tell them that we're
But,
not going to sit and wait
Yeah.
around.
but I'll take that back to the EMS board. Gotcha. Next up, we've got cannabis zoning laws, and we had a discussion about that a month ago. Sent the most recent email I have regarding that was February or April 29th. What am I doing here? And that was from Councilmember Bukowski. Thank you, with some suggestions, getting into that. But I don't know if our board members here have put in any thought into what Councilmember Jazinski had brought forward regarding this. And I know this was something he wanted us to discuss, so I'd be happy to yield the floor to the council member before I say anything else.
Yeah, I'd like to just, see it like 1,000 feet from any school, where children aren't passing it, stuff like that on their way to school. I think that would be important. And we should probably limit how many we're willing to permit in the town. I think, there should be a capacity.
Anyone else? So, for my part, there was a recent news story, and all I caught was the headline. But it said something to the effect of the Office of Cannabis Management getting an overhaul. And one of the things they called for in it was frankly, to make it easier for these cannabis shops to open up. So our time is really limited if we wanted to get a local law regarding cannabis put in place to deal with this, because we've already got one shop that's going to be grandfathered in that I'm aware of. And depending on how long this takes for us, we're going to have a few others. So if we change the distances, doubled them or tripled them, that's not going to apply at all to the shop that's open and to the couple others that may open up.
What are the current operation hours now?
For that one,
10 to 10, I believe.
I think it is 10 to 10.
10
Yeah,
to 10,
I
12
forget.
hours?
Yeah, I forget. But I mean, that was something else that was mentioned here, is how many, what kind of operating hours do we want? And the idea was, having them close around 8 o'clock. I've always been of the opinion, what's good for liquor stores is good for these shops. So I'd be happy to take a look around at the hours that are operating in those liquor stores, like I said in the past, and maybe do a basis of that, but, I will forward I'll respond to this email chain here, between the work session and the regular meeting. And give one last opportunity for board members to share written input. And at that point, we'll see if we can get support for, extending those distances. And if we do, if there's anything else related to that, related to changes to this law, we can get it into the proposed one that was forwarded to us last month and get something out to a public hearing. Does that work for everyone?
Sure.
Yep.
All right, then, that gets cannabis off our list. We have resolutions to go through. Yay! So I think this evening is probably best to just go through them one at a time and make sure that we're all on the same page as much as we can be regarding those. Where did I put it? All right. First one up we have, everyone's ready, is the appointment of a police lieutenant. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, I'm just gonna start reading through table items one at a time. We've got 2024-205, that was approving sewer work using fund balances. Any questions? All right, 206, this is a resolution in order after public hearing for sewer expenditures. This resolution is pertaining to sanitary sewer bonding for the DEC match, DEC consolidated sewer work, and the $500,000 for the Genesee Street Pump Station. I should add that we have a resolution also within regular order for the same thing. This item right now calls for $3.9 million bonding and has much the same language as the other resolution. My recommendation would be to pull this one and have a discussion based on the one in the regular packet. Any objection to that?
No.
All right. Next up, we have a table resolution for bonding for drainage improvements on town highways. I know this has come up a few times before at the amount of $5 million. I would be willing to make an amendment tonight to get this amount down to $2 million. If there's support for a $2 million bond for drainage improvement on town highways. And Mr. Crystal, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we did a $2 million bond, that would cover Pleasant Shanley out of this, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so that'd be my proposal. I don't know if there's board interest in moving ahead with that or any desire for discussion on that. Right. Next up, we have appointment of Board of Assessment Review member Kathleen Stalen. Questions, comments, or concerns?
So do we fall under the county now at this point because the May 1st deadline?
Yeah, that's, Michael Milks can answer that, but I want to make a point. At the last meeting, when we discussed this, I kind of misstated exactly what was going to happen. I do my best up here to be factual and above board and exactly what's going on as far as these things go. I didn't have all of my facts straight. I had the general conclusion worked out, but my apologies for that. Mr. Milks is going to fill us in.
Yeah, so no, we're not under the county.
Okay. So this resolution is relevant then and could address it.
Correct. So we would have, with this resolution, we would have a fully staffed Board of Assessment Review with 3 members. Without this resolution, I'm still able to hold grievance day legally. I have a quorum with 2 members, but if something happens to one of them, then that's when it becomes a problem. We would reach out to the county. The county could appoint someone to serve as a member, but right now they don't have anybody. They don't have any candidates lined up. So they didn't have anybody that they could give us if this board didn't appoint Kathy.
So regarding this, suppose we have a situation where there's a 1-1 vote and only 2-person board. In that event, my understanding between meetings and discussions I've had with folks in assessment land is that that particular case would go to county.
No, it's denied.
It's tied and it doesn't get done.
It's denied.
It's denied.
Denied. Yes.
So a 1-1 is denied. It doesn't go to county.
No.
Yeah, this is unprecedented. So like
Yeah.
I'm learning as I
Yes.
go in this
So
particular
did I.
case. Yeah.
It would be denied, and then the petitioner would have to go to the next step, either a small claims hearing, pay the $35 and do that, or tax or Article 7 case for commercial properties.
Okay.
And if the county had to appoint somebody, the board doesn't vote on that, correct?
No, but I don't
Appointment's
think they
made by
can
the
at this
county to
point.
fill that vacancy.
Correct. They can't at this point because the training's already occurred.
Gotcha.
Yeah, this is the part where, I was under the impression that the county would take this over. That's not the case, which, as I said, an unprecedented situation. So you're learning as you're going with something.
Yeah, if the county if we were to ask them to step in, it would be a shared service agreement like we do with the schools and anybody else.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Next up, we have Resolution 2024-235. It's a notice to bidders for equipment operators for public works projects. This is an item that maybe Mr. Crystal, you want to speak to it briefly? The importance of this and the next resolution?
Sure, absolutely. As we stated at the last board meeting. So once again, these items keep getting tabled as well as the funding sources. So once again, like I said before, until we can determine what we're going to fund and what we're going to propose to build, I can't clearly define the scope of work I need to in these contracts, okay, for accounting purposes, okay? So these resolutions are going to continue to kind of be lumped up with the other ones. So until we can finalize a plan as to what we're going to propose to construct this year, these bids are going to continue to just kind of sit there in queue, waiting to go, okay, if that makes sense. So it's kind of a package deal, even though they're separate entities. But when it comes to the sewer work, when it comes to the drainage work, that's what these 2 contracts support, okay? So until we can determine a funding source, they're gonna kind of sit there until we figure that out.
Do the existing contracts we have and awards of bid allow you to do sanitary drainage work?
So when we extended at the last board meeting.
I'm sorry, sanitary sewer work.
Correct, yes, absolutely. So we extended the existing public works contract at the last board meeting with a non-end date for the simple fact that the needs we have out there, we can work on, because that language is in said contract,
Right.
okay? So we can perform sanitary sewer repairs related to the consent order and other needs we have, because that language is there in black and white in that contract, okay?
Gotcha.
But we can't kick off to the new stuff, whether it be Pleasant and Shanley that you referred to before, Genesee Street Station, things like that. That's gonna be new work that's not in the existing contract, okay? So these new contracts will supplant that once we determine what we're gonna do.
Got it. So that goes along with the bonding. Appreciate
Correct,
it.
yep.
Thanks. That deals with that. The concrete installation bid was also explained. Any questions, comments, concerns on 236? All right, let's move on to the consent agenda items. First, we have the transfer of funds. Any questions?
You have a question on that?
Sure.
Where is that going?
That-
Maybe Rachel can.
Yes.
So these funds are grant funds that we receive. And it's not really a transfer of funds, it's to increase the budget and the revenue and the expense account. It's a $450,000 grant that we get from New York State in 5 equal, almost equal portions. And we get the check and then we have to increase the revenue account to account for that money and also increase the expense account so that we can spend that money. So it's not really a transfer, it's just increasing the budgets.
All right, any other questions? Okay. Moving on to 239, the warrant. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. 240, amend agreement with Labella Associates, DPC. Any questions, comments, concerns? It's a change order. 241 is amend agreement with Bison Elevator Services. Any questions on that? Okay, 242, we have amend agreement with Ferguson Electric for electrical modifications, new 88 three-stop hydraulic elevator. Any questions? Resolution 6, acquisition installation of 78 new fabric lined foam padded auditorium seats for council. Any questions on that? All right, 244, award of bid work uniforms. Any questions? Resolution 8, award of bid for demolition with asbestos for 31 Coralwood Court. Any questions? How about resolution 9, award of bid for Vestas survey at 217 Orchard? All right. Resolution 10, acceptance of proposal, electric modifications to Dingens Park Pool. Yes.
Question on that. For that modification on that, I'm guessing it's probably you there, Mark. Oh,
Yep, yeah,
Different Mark.
different mark.
Different Mark, yeah, Mark's here. We all doing?
I just want to update us as far as where we are with that pool and
So, Mark could speak for the
what
water.
relates to this.
So again, we're on schedule, okay? So the new water service is in, that's been approved by Erie County Water, we're connected, we're good to go in there. Justin, our internal plumber's working on the final connections inside the pool itself. Like I mentioned at the last board meeting, I just want to warn everyone that again, the filter housing and everything hasn't run in 4 years. So once we get water in there, let's hope, knock on wood, that holds, okay? The electrical modifications, we got the conduit in, the wires run from the front building to the back building, that's ready to go. Once this gets approved, we'll get everything hooked up, so we're on schedule. So, hopefully everything goes well once we get water in there, but we're good to go. Yep, okay?
And then, so this job that needs to be done, is that outside of the scope of our staff?
It's outside the scope of our staff, correct? Yes, yes, yep.
What's the difference? Why can't our staff do that?
On the Ferguson Park? With the resolution talking about now, exactly,
Yeah,
correct, yes,
Ferguson,
yeah,
Ferguson.
correct.
Yeah.
Well, they were running, so the service running from the distribution panel all the way back to the sub panel that feeds the actual pool pump itself was shot. Last year, there was issues underground where I believe the facilities had to go there and try to locate it, dig up some concrete and make a repair, but it was just a patch to it. So as the water issue came up, they included that within the budgetary allocation for the electrical repair as well. to get it done in a timely manner. Right now, I believe our town electrician has just went out. He's going out. He's out, so in order to streamline this, to make sure that we meet this season's deadline, we sent out the bid and Ferguson came as a little bidder.
Significantly lower than last time as well. So that's like you said, so just to follow up on Mark, so the existing water and the existing electric line ran under the concrete deck from the front building to the back, okay? And we didn't know where the water break was. We didn't know where the voltage loss was, okay? And again, it's impossible to trace it without busting up that deck.
Yeah.
So we said, listen, we're gonna run a new service around both ends through the lawn area. We have restoration to do yet. We're gonna work on it the next couple of weeks before the pool's open, concrete will be poured, the grass will be all done. But again, we ran a new electrical service as well as a new water service around, so we don't have to mess with the integrity of the deck, okay? If that makes sense to you, okay? So, yep.
And just real quick, while you're up here, what is our time frame for filling that system up with water to see if we are on the schedule?
John?
The schedule to fill is, I think, first Saturday in June, first Saturday in June.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, Councilman Jazinski.
So aside from that, I have two questions actually. Aside from this electrical work, are there any unforeseen things that you could see that could, we could incur more costs for this pool to be, or prolong it from being opened?
As of now, no. Okay, like I said, the only thing I question is the internal filter tank and all this stuff. Again, we won't know until we get water in it, okay? Because again, that hasn't had water in it in almost 5 years now, okay?
2018.
Yeah, right, exactly. So 5 years now, right, exactly, correct, right. The brominator and whatnot that's in there, right?
Brominator was replaced.
Yeah, okay, so that's good. So again, we're replacing everything we know that's defective, but again, just like anything else, it's been dry for 5 years now, so let's knock on wood that we don't have anything else that we unforeseen to now, but everything that we know was defective or faulty has been addressed, okay?
Is that cable running in the same route as the old cable?
It is not, no,
It's a burial style cable? Is it ran in conduit?
Yes, correct.
it's ran in conduit.
Is the prints going to be updated with this new line?
We will do as-built when it's all said and done, exactly, correct, yes, yep.
All right, anyone else? Thank you. All right, we're up to Resolution 11, acceptance of proposal for the purchase installation of carpet and luxury vinyl tiles located in Council Chambers. 12, 3881 Broadway Seeker. 13 is 3881 Site Plan. Any questions? All right. 14 is 585 Duke Seeker. 15 is 585 Duke Site Plan. 16, adopt local law 4, a local law amended to amend 260 of the code of Town of Cheektowaga titled zoning. This is about sign regulations. Any questions? We've got 17, resolution 17, local law 2005, amends the building construction codes. This is about changes in turn relating to electrical in town in the language of the local laws. We've got resolution 18, 255, local law number 6, a local law to amend the taxation law of the Town of Cheektowaga. This is relating to senior citizens exemptions. Any questions, comments, concerns? Right?
My concern actually is just on this quick.
Okay, Councilmember Pilarski.
I mean, we just passed that. I'm not saying I'm against, increasing the exemptions, but I think we have a fiscal nightmare ahead of us. This next budget is going to be very difficult for all of us. And if we just keep giving exemptions, I mean, there's a fine line to cross to where everything is given away, whether it's veterans, which I support, seniors support. But where do we kind of say, hey, we got to pause for a second on that? And where do we say, hey, what about those that don't qualify for exemptions? We're putting more on their backs. So there's a fine line there, and I just don't know where that's at right now, not knowing where the future financially we're at right here with this board in the town. So to me, it gives me some concern to kind of address this at this moment. If we could say, hey, we've got a financial plan that's gonna, put the town in good shape, but I mean, what we're seeing right now and the way we're talking as a board, we're not there, in my opinion.
All right, any others?
Yeah, Brian.
Jerry?
It's like I said, I think we've done this, 4 times in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's noted in the whereas, it's
Yeah.
local law 2 of 22, 23, and then 5 of 23.
Right, and it's getting to the point, what's this gonna cost us? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think we're gonna have a tough time with next year's budget. What's the cost on this? I mean, what's it gonna cost the taxpayers that they're gonna have to pick up, basically the blue light specials that the elderly people are getting? You know, when does it end and how much can the younger people afford to pay? So anybody under 65, I'm assuming, is gonna pick up all these expenses. It's not gonna help get more new people into town, I don't think. You know, and it's like I said, how far do we go? And I think the biggest problem we've got right now, in my book, fear of the unknown, just like the pump station. You know, fear mongering, like what happened? Who expected that? Always expect the unexpected. Money's got to come from someplace. You know, and realistically, there's another one we'll be getting to, you know, about cutting the budget. We can't expect to do the same services with less money. Just doesn't work.
All right, any others? Councilmember Jazinski.
Yeah, I would concur with Jerry's and Brian's statement about, you know, it's gonna be a tough pill to swallow, but I think, you know, these seniors that are struggling, paying their taxes, that are years behind on their taxes, are in one of the largest groups in this town that are being foreclosed or losing their houses. So I don't know about you, but I'd love to retire in this town, and, you know, I'm sure most of us would, but, you know, when it comes time to retirement, the last thing you want to do is worry about losing your house because some unfortunate things we talk about, you know, unforeseen, extraordinary things that happen in people's lives, right? So when you're a senior, the last thing you want to worry about is that, hey, you know, I could lose my house. I lost my husband, you know, my roof's in bad shape. So I think that we just need to reconsider how we spend the town's money. And I don't think we have to lose services. We just have to change the way we're spending the town's money because the money's there to do what we need to do. It's just the people who built this town. I know a lot of seniors built their houses 50 plus years ago that now they paid into the system to make Cheektowaga the great place it is, are now struggling to pay taxes on a house that they paid off 10 and 20 years ago. And they don't have any children to go to schools. They're having to absorb that. Now, to my understanding, the people who live in Maryville's tax district, their school tax levy is going to go up. So that's only going to put a further burden on the people that are already burdened. So
Do you have a percentage on that?
I don't have the exact numbers, but I know it's been on the news and talked about. I don't know the exacts. I actually had requested to meet with the superintendent for Maryville several times. I'm hoping that we'll be able to talk about it so I can be able to say, listen, this is what's going on, give some people some hard numbers. So, you know, I think we need to do what's right, you know, just like the veterans, you know, I'm a retired veteran, let's say, and I'm retired and I was addicted to pain pills because I was overseas, because, you know, I got hurt in action. Now I'm going to lose my house because I can't afford the tax. And, you know, we got to reconsider who we're taking care of in this town. We need to take care of the people who built this town and made it the great place it is. And the last thing I know I want to do when I'm in my golden years, when I should be in cruise control, worrying if I'm going to be able to make my tax bill.
Councilmember Pilarski, and then I'd like to go next.
No, I mean, I definitely agree with Mike here with his concerns and everything. I can't disagree with him. You know, hey, losing your home is no good for any age. I'm not quite sure that the senior citizens are the demographics with the highest foreclosures. I'd like to see those numbers, but Maryville is at a 1.91 tax levy increase under the cap. They're actually amongst the lowest within the school districts in Western New York for that argument piece. But I just think if we keep giving, like, do we give veterans an additional tax exemption? Do we give the seniors an additional, because that's going to fall on the younger population, and then that could cause more foreclosures and because now you know, the younger population can't afford their taxes. So I get the intent of it. I support the intent. I'm just not ready to bite right now on it, not knowing where the future of this town is moving in regards to financially with our budgets and the taxing proposals that may be coming. Right now I can't swallow this and take a bite of this apple, but I get the intent, and down the road I can support it.
Yeah, it's the most recent time we did this, it required more administration, which means our office staff in the assessor's office had to do more work to administer each of the exemptions. And that took more people hours. It means you had to have money in the budget for administering a tax exemption. So there's going to be a cost associated with this. Other than that cost, this is just a shift of tax burden. And it's a matter of the folks that you have that can qualify for this that are likely less than 20% of property owners. And you've got a lot of other folks, one of the biggest groups, you talk about the seniors that can't afford their homes, I understand that. There's also a large group of young mothers that struggle to afford their mortgages and for daycare. Young people that struggle to afford their student loans that are paying their property taxes on the homes they just bought in this town because of folks that have gone to live in assisted living or moved out of state or moved out of town or passed on. We have thousands and thousands of property owners under 65 that are just started their 30-year mortgages. This is the first generation to where they're having a harder time building wealth than their parents. And we've got to balance competing needs here. And we've done this 3 times already. In my view, I think at the moment, what we have is sufficient on the books. We can take this up again next year. Not only does this come with an actual cost to the assessor's office, the possibility of another part-timer or even a full-timer, it means that town tax burden is going to shift over. And it should be noted that this is not going to do anything about half the tax bill, which is the school taxes. They have to do a senior exemption in the school district, right, Councilman Pilarski? So you can't do anything about that. This isn't going to apply to the fire districts. Is that right, Assessor? Or some of the other special districts. This gets to the town line. If the county has, they have their exception that would get to the county tax line and I think the library tax, right? So this impacts the town tax and not so much some of these other pieces, but we've got to think about everybody in this town. And we've done this 3 times. I sponsored one of them. Councilman Jazinski and I voted together on all 3 of those. And I'm not in favor tonight. Anybody else?
I'd like to say one last comment.
Sure.
I would agree with you. It's hard to be a homeowner in this economy and this inflation and stuff like that. But it seems like, the deficit goes up, the spending goes up with government. And I think government needs to go on a diet. I mean, the average human being has to live with less. Why does government get to spend more and more and more and put that burden onto it? So we're talking about 2 separate issues. Tonight, we have on the table a resolution to do something that's very good for the seniors that deserve it. If you'd like to put a resolution together and explore the opportunity to see what we can do to make homeowner affordable, especially in this town of Cheektowaga, because, we've talked about affordable housing, and my ideal of affordable housing isn't building a 5-story high rise. It's, taking these houses that have been foreclosed and are sitting and dilapidated and giving a young couple the opportunity to buy it at a steal and give them the opportunity, the American dream. Home ownership, the 3 most important things you do in your life: the day you meet your partner, the day you have your kids, and the day you buy your house. So I think we should address that. I totally agree with you. I think that would be a great issue and topic to talk about, making it, more feasible for people to buy homes in Cheektowaga and get them on the tax roll, right? Instead of having these houses that sit and get dilapidated and neighbors complaining. I got 3 complaints today that, the houses that are in these areas, that the lawns aren't even getting cut and the grass is almost up to the windowsill. So, what does that do? It puts more burden on the tax people. Why not take these houses, repurpose them, and give them to people that are struggling to try to, buy a house? So right now, we're talking about senior citizens. I'd be more than happy to entertain or talk about, home ownership with the younger generation, because I agree with you. I think we should talk about that as well. I think our tax is out of control, not only in this town, but in this state. New York State is the highest taxed state in the union. And I think we need to set the example and show people that we're willing to do something for the people instead of taxing them out of this town.
Anybody else?
Yeah, one more time, Brian.
All right, then we got to move on.
And I'm just gonna play the old guy. I'm gonna give you a little bit of history because I've been involved with quite a few people over the years in my age group. Geez, I wonder why, right? Including a lot of people I went to school with. They had one hell of a good time all their life, and tell you a little saying you used to advertise on TV back in the late 60s, early 70s. Credit cards, travel now, pay later. And it's still, to me, it is mind-boggling. People that I grew up with at my age still have 8, 10, 12 years to go on a mortgage. At 80 years old, which to me is outrageous. And what does that tell me? Poor money management. And as far as a lot of these foreclosed homes, if ever anybody wants to look at it, I think countywide, because Rachel and I had talked about this, I think we've got 9.5% of the foreclosures in Erie County, which I don't think is a bad number when you look at the county overall. A lot of them that I have looked up basically bankruptcies. And it's interesting when you talk to lawyers, I've talked to a couple of them already that are having a heyday because a lot of the houses that are being sold because of bankruptcies or being foreclosed on is because of divorces. Imagine that in today's world, right? When better than 50% of the divorces do fail. And a lot of them are pre-foreclosure sales. And as near as I can figure, and I haven't documented it, a lot of these are younger families that got in over their heads. Everybody depends on a two-family paycheck today. Well, what happens with a divorce? Now you're down to one paycheck, correct? First thing that's going to go is the big ticket items, which is a house. And I think transferring all this from one group of people to another serves no purpose. And this is my biggest example, and everybody hears about it. What's running out of money in the next couple of years again? Social Security, right? I'm sure everybody's heard that story. What's the only thing that you never hear about running out of money? Welfare. Isn't that amazing? You know, and to Mr. Jasinski's statement, there are so many programs for the elderly people where they can get help. And I'm going to be a little sarcastic, and I think I had mentioned this before. I could turn around tomorrow, totally disconnect myself from my business and make myself eligible to get the top end of this discount on my house. You know, and this is where I'm going to be the smartest. What's my house worth?
Is that a bad thing though, Jerry?
Yes, it is.
Why is it a bad thing that you should take advantage of something that's designed to help senior citizens?
Because, and I'm not going to get into
And you talk about welfare. Do we want to raise the poverty rate? And to me, 9% of foreclosures in this town is 9% too high. One foreclosure is too high in this town. There are seniors that can't come to the town to even, go try to see what they can do about their tax bill because they have no means of transportation. Their families died off, they're sick, they can't even get out to get their medicine. And they're sitting there suffering, looking at these bills upon bills. I agree. Whose fault is it? Is it the person's fault or is it the people who give the loans out? Maybe there should be stricter restrictions.
Okay, we're getting off the beaten path here. I think we should move on to the next resolution. We've got about 35 minutes. I hate to cut you short, but we've got other business to deal with, about 20 resolutions to get through. We're at 19. This is notice to bidders for curbside recycling collection. Bidding that out for the first time in 10 years. Any questions? We've got resolution 20. This is the sanitary sewer bond resolution that I mentioned earlier. While we're at the work session, I'd like to change dollar amounts on this item for in the first paragraph where it reads 3.95 to have that read 3.5. And, well, no, 2 million, I believe. That be right, Mr. Kraus, 2 million?
That first section is talking about the full spending of the project.
Okay, so do that at 3.5.
Right.
And then changing to 3.5 in paragraph number 4 under the text resolution in order of hearing, 3.5 million there. Going over to the second page, under the further order, that a portion of the 3.5, change that to 3.5 million, would be financed by the expenditures of 1.45 million of sewer balance and an amount not to exceed 2 million in the issuance of bonds and notes. Now, we don't have to propose amendments at this point, do we? Considering it's a new resolution, we can change the numbers at the work session? Or should we?
There's got to be some documentation
Okay,
in the minutes. Yes, we can notate it in the minutes that there was discussion about it, just so that when we get to the meeting minutes, we know why it's different. I would prefer that you do it at the meeting because it's cleaner. than
Okay.
Trying to do it here.
We can do the amendments at the meeting. Thank you, clerk. Any questions on that before we move along? We still have 20 items to consider. All right, acoustic upgrades for town hall council chambers. Any questions? All right, 22, approve agreement with Lawley Insurance for loss control services. Any questions? 23, tactical team grant program award acceptance. 24, preparation of 5-year consolidated plan. 25, analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. How about 26, retain outside counsel for civil litigation matters. 27, reduction of budget expenditures for 2025. Any questions? Councilman Kaminsky, then Pilarski.
I'm curious because number one, what's the budget for 2025 going to be? Anybody know?
We have the opportunity to work on it.
No, I need a number.
Well, I don't know. We have to see what the needs are first, needs versus wants, because I know that, you know, to my understanding, being on this board for just over 2 years, that some people haven't spent all their budget in September and there's some remaining funds. So now there's stuff that they buy that aren't necessarily needed. So, I mean, I'm all about getting people what they need, but not always getting what they want. So what we need to do is that we need to consider this. And, you know, unfortunately, to some people, it's going to, you know, be hard. But I think we need to make some cuts. And I don't mean taking, you know, people off the street to collect our garbage. I don't mean the guys who plow our streets and who maintain this town. But there's definitely things where in some of these budgets, I think it would be foolish to say that not every department in this town could take a 1% hit. I think they would be totally survive and be viable.
Well, I think, and I don't want to get in a big discussion about it, but I'll use the police department for a prime example. I think 1% would put them somewhere is between $180,000, $190,000 cut. How many new police cars is that? Quite a few. And it's like I said, for the last 8 years anyway, we have not even come close to the tax cap. Most of the increases, if any, were under 0.5% at best. And it's like I said, all you got to do is look around at Hamburg, look at Hamburg, Lackawanna, city of Buffalo. So we're going to reduce our budget. And what do you think the inflation rate is going to be next year? I have no idea. I don't have an answer for that. I do not have a crystal ball. You know when we're going to find out? When more departments run out of money and we can no longer provide the services that we are required to do for the residents. It's pretty simple in my book. Right now, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, the end of last year, highway ran out of money where they couldn't even afford to buy tires for a lot of the vehicles. The same with replacing vehicles. We had a plan in place. The sad part, the budgets have been cut so bad, we're running 20-year-old trucks that in short order, we're not going to be able to afford to repair them. Not at all. You know, and it's like I said, there's so much of it. I think this is so premature and outrageous. It's ridiculous, and it's something I will never vote for.
All right, Councilman Pilarski. Thank you, Councilmember Kaminsky. Pilarski, you're up.
I get the intent. I applaud it. I don't fully disagree that cuts need to be made. I can't blindly just say a 1%, a 5%, whatever. Without talking to department heads. I know myself and Barb, we have a meeting with our senior services department coming up May 31st, and I will be rolling out with the other departments that I oversee very soon to get those meetings scheduled because it's going to be a tough budget season, so it better start sooner than later. But how do you cut? I mean, not all departments are the same. So to blindly just say a 1% across the board is irresponsible, I believe, because CDBG funds, fund one department fully, but then the other department may have some extra money in their department that you can cut. So some departments may not have room or any wiggle room to make that 1% cut. So it can't be just cookie cutter. How do you cut 1% of debt payments? How do you cut 1% of minimum wage going up, which is a 3.33%? How do you cut 1% in the police department? Is that 2 positions? Is it 3 or 4 cars? How do you cut contracts labor contracts that were already locked into, that we just negotiated at a 3.25. Our overall budget of 103 million, 75% of it is labor costs and health benefits and all that. You can't cut that with increasing health costs. How do you cut that? So to put a number on it right now without talking to department heads, I think is irresponsible. Does it need to be cuts? There's gonna have to be. What does that look like? I don't have that answer without talking to the department heads or hearing what their needs are. I agree, there's needs versus wants, and we need to hear from every department head before a resolution like this is a yes for me.
Yeah, it's, Councilman Thompson. Go ahead.
Obviously being the newer council member here, coming from restaurant industry, well-known restaurant, multi-million-dollar restaurant. And for me to tell you that there's not waste that goes on there, and they can save money from all the waste being the size they are, and we're, light years ahead of them, to tell me that there's no waste that can be trimmed or cut, I just find it hard to believe. I understand, concerns from departments to say, hey, we're really tight, it doesn't have to come from payroll, but and forgive me, 5 months into this, I find it hard to believe that there is no waste going on anywhere throughout this entire town. And I don't think anybody in this entire audience would disagree with that. That's just my thought on it. I love the intent of this, but for us to sit here and say that it's impossible to cut, I just find that hard to believe, because there's gonna be waste everywhere you go. Every business, it's gonna happen. And I don't think there's many people that could disagree with that. You may not be able to point it out right away. You might have to dig a little bit, but that's the nature of it. That's just my thought. And is this perfect the way that it's worded? No, but I understand the intent behind it, and I think it's something to think about, at least. Have those conversations that are difficult conversations.
But if this were to pass, this one handcuffed.
If I could, I'd like to go next, and then Councilor Jaworski will go next after. So we're talking about appropriations versus expenditures. They're two different things. Appropriations is the amount of money you say, hey, we're gonna make this live to spend. Expenditures is what you actually spend. So I was taking a look through the 2023 budget. I asked for a budget prep report from the finance director, and it looks, based on my math, that we spent just about $99.03 million last year. A $4 million difference between appropriations and expenditures. Expenditures were about $4 million less. But I want to start getting into some of the specific funds, because we're talking about 1% and basically taking a sledgehammer to the budget when you should be taking a scalpel. Why should you take a scalpel to the budget? The sanitation fund is $9.8 million, right? As a percentage, the sanitation spending last year was 99.98% of what was appropriated. They were allocated about, this isn't a criticism, it's a description of the numbers, so please understand that. They were allocated about 9.7 million and change to cover all their costs, and because of landfills, labor, all that, they spent everything but $387. So there's no 1% to cut in that sanitation budget. The highway budget. We had a vote earlier this year to buy a truck out of reserve funds, a brand new garbage truck. We've had a vote here to approve highway spending out of reserve funds for daily operations and to repair a bridge. We've had other votes to use highway reserve funds for things. The dollar amount left in a $14 million highway budget last year was, where's my highway one? 146 grand. We spent 54% of that budget. The 1%, it's already gone out of that. That's $30 million. You got a lighting district of nearly $3 million. It's 167,000 in the red because of billing. We spent 106% of that. Then you've got hydrant districts, and altogether, we spent basically 100% of the hydrant district money. So you're talking the first $30 million of this budget plus. You can't, or 40 million if you get into the sewer too. You can't really touch it because we're at the bone already. When you have a $9.8 million budget and you only have $387 left, there ain't no cutting. And that's part of the 2% tax cap. So we're talking about $103 million. The 1% appropriation cut would be 1.03 million. We just talked about a recycling contract. First time in 10 years, we have to bid that out. Those costs are probably going to double. And we budgeted 940 grand or something to that effect this time. So if you take their cut of 1.03 million, you add the minimum wage going up, you add the recycling contract, you add the contracts we have agreed to. In addition, we're negotiating with the dispatchers right now, and we're gonna have to negotiate with our supervisory union. You're not looking for $1 million cutting cuts, you're looking for 3 million for these increased costs. And you can't go to sanitation for it because it's at 100. You can't go to your hydrant districts, your lighting district is in the red. Where can you go? The general fund, where there was $56 million of appropriations, and they spent all of it, but about $3 million. So now you have that basically at the bone. And the kind of costs that come in the general fund, I will read off the dish. There's 80 cents on the dollar goes to 6 lines. Employee benefits, policing, parks, the dispatch office or communication system, the IT department, and central data processing. That's 80 cents on the dollar. The other 20 cents is your central garage. With those budgets have gone down over the last 10 years. And the youth, senior services, engineering, we have a need for an electrician. It was in the 2024 budget. There was an electrician's helper in 23. It was requested in this budget. It's not funded. It was zeroed out. We need another electrician. We need an apprenticeship on that. We're not going to have any money for that. We can't add it to it. Then you have $3,070,000. I don't mean to go on. I'll stop here, but if it's department by department, it's physically impossible. But if it's 1% across the whole town, you're taking away contingency money completely. And you already have sanitation operating at 100%. You have some districts that have gone over that need to be adjusted. I don't think this is a good idea. Councilman Jazinski.
Thank you for those numbers. I appreciate you sharing that with us. So just by the language you said, sounds like the town of Cheektowaga's got a spending problem. I don't know about you, but since 2020, the average American household has spent up to 50% more money in the past year than they have since 2020 to maintain the same lifestyle. So with all these proposed bonds and all this stuff, what is that going to do? The people that are already struggling in our town are going to have to incur more money that they're already struggling to pay. What does that equate to? It equates to people leaving their house. They're going to say, hey, man, you know, the way this neighborhood once was, I'm getting out of here. The taxes are too high. You know, it's not the same Cheektowaga that I grew up in. You know, this is Cheektowaga. You know, there needs to be a standard of living here. And that doesn't mean constantly putting all these expenditures on the taxpayers' back. Somewhere, somehow, I mean, we've got a lot of smart people in this room that I'm sure that we could come up with some solution to try to make some cuts where it's beneficial for all. And this is a proposal. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a start. Like I said, you know, I know for myself, you know, I spend more money now than I have since 2020 to try to maintain the same lifestyle. And I think it's harder for our seniors to live in this town that are struggling to make ends meet. I think that we need to relook at the way we spend money in this town. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I bet you if we got a forensic auditor in and we audited each individual department, or we had a controller, which I'm in favor of hiring. In fact, I plan on proposing that for the next town board meeting to get a controller so we can control our spending. Because from everything you said, it sounds like a lot of darn money for, you know, 86,000, the last count I got, and I think it's decreasing. So, you know, if we don't get our town's budget under control, we don't get our spending under control, it's just going to force more people out of this town. It's going to take more people off the tax roll. And it's going to be harder for younger people, as you said, to buy a house in the town of Cheektowaga, because what you're going to do is you're going to increase the tax roll for them. And they're going to say, why would I live in Cheektowaga when I can go live in West Seneca, or I can live in Elma, where I'm not paying all this money in tax to live? So I think we need to reconsider the way we spend money in this town. And that doesn't mean taking our people who are the backbone of this town, who, you know, mow the grass and plow the roads and our electricians and plumbers and stuff like that. And I think that this is a very good start. And I would find it hard to believe that there's not 1% at every department. I would really find it hard to believe because, you know, I'm responsible for the financials of my company, and I'm always looking for ways to save money. I'm not looking for always the cheapest route, but I'm looking for the most economical way of doing things. And currently, right now, we're not doing that in the town of Cheektowaga. It's looking for more economical, more feasible ways to spend money in this town.
Appreciate that. I'm gonna wind this up and then we have to move along. You know, it's tax and spend, it's spend and tax. We increased the tax levy 1% over the last 2 years. The budget of 4.78% appropriations increase was the largest that was done in the last 15 years. Before that was a 3.24%, one of the largest in the last 15 years. We increased spending 8% and we increased the tax levy 1%. We've spent the money already. We've approved $26 million of bonding, including a $13 million street lighting project. We've already spent the money. We have to pay the bills now. And to say when it comes time to pay the bills that we're just going to implement a 1% spending cut totally across the board without taking a scalpel to this budget, we have to think about what bills we incurred and why we might not be able to. We already spent the money for the labor contracts. We're down the road to spend the money already for the recycling and these other
Right,
things.
but this is for the year 2025, so this is the next budget that we're gonna plan for. So yes, we already spent the money for 2024, so when all these department heads come to us and say, here's our budget, we're gonna look to ways to help them to, you know, run their budget more economically. You know, I'm not necessarily saying they have to have less, but, you know, there's gotta be a better way of doing it. And right now, the current way we're doing things, I think we'd all be fools to say it's working for everybody.
All right,
I would
thank you.
agree on that. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there needs to be cuts. I agree with Bert. There definitely is waste where we can, you know, eliminate things, but not knowing exactly without looking at every single line item with that department head to make that call on here. This handcuffs us to say, we're gonna do a 1% no matter what, whether it hurts a department or the town, or, you know, it can be done or can't be done. This resolution, in addition to other resolutions, I mean, you just mentioned how you're gonna put a comptroller resolution through next meeting. Well, where's the cost? How much does it cost? Where's the money coming from? This is all work session stuff that we should be discussing in the work session and kind of piggybacking and brainstorming and throwing ideas before it comes up to here. And then we all either A, look like we haven't done our homework, or we look like we're divided. And I don't think that's the case. I think all of us want to reduce the spending in the town. All of us want the budget to be as low as possible. But then one side looks like bad guys here for shooting it down. The other side looks like, oh, you know, it's all sexy and great that they want to make a 1% cut and whatnot. But we just got to talk about it.
Yeah.
Throwing it on a resolution up here without a plan, it's not doing anyone a service. We spent 8 meetings trying to figure out bonding. This is going to fail. The comptroller one, if we don't know where the money's coming from and the additional costs will fail. We got to work together on this stuff instead of just throwing it on a packet the Tuesday before, thinking it's going to get supported by everybody.
I agree, Brian. I totally agree with you. And I mean, you clearly, and I've got the text to prove it, that say you're not willing to talk to me anymore or work with me anymore.
Okay, this is off
Hold
topic.
on,
let me finish.
No,
I need
guys,
to
we're
finish.
moving on to the next
Hold on.
resolution.
Let me finish my sentence, please.
You are right. I
It's
wrote
off
you off.
topic, Councilman. Resolution 2024-265, authorizing supervisor to sign an agreement with the town of Cheektowaga and the Captain and Lieutenants Association. Any questions? 29, authorize supervisor to extend public benefit services contract. Any questions there? Thank you. 30, authorize AG youth organization. Anything there? 31, authorize supervisor to execute MOU with baseball, softball, various organizations. 32, appointment of recreation leader. 33, appointment of recreation leader, Ryan Smith. 34, appointment of maintenance worker, sewer. Appointment of laborer and sanitation. Hiring part-time, termination of part-time seasonal employees. Youth and rec transfers. Youth and rec hiring. Youth and recreation hiring non-residents. Special event for Independence Day parade and celebration. Special event for the German Fest. Special event for Walk to Remember. And then we have suspension of rules. We've got 3 items there tonight. First is to rescind resolution 2024-140. Any questions? Second is to appoint a court analyst, Megan Green. Any questions on that? And it's just a clerical change here. And then the last one is a travel authorization. That's resolution 282. Any questions there?
Do you got any copies of those suspension of rules resolutions?
I don't have, I've only got the one in front of me for the two. I don't have the travel.
Regular meeting, could you run them off and have them for the rest of the board, please?
They're on the website.
I'm on the website, I didn't find it.
They should,
I'm on it, Brian.
they should be,
Website.
they should be on there. Let's take a moment to look for that. We do have a need for a brief executive session to discuss the public safety dispatchers contract along with, give me just a moment to get the wording precise, along with, the matters leading to the appointment or retention of a particular corporation. I'll make a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
No.
All right, we're in executive session.